The morning showdown. It was one of those peaceful Saturday mornings that begged for nothing more than a cup of coffee and sunlight. I had just finished mowing my small front yard, sweat running down my neck, when I decided to sit for a while on the grass. I was wearing a simple white tank top and some old shorts. Not exactly a fashion statement, but it was my lawn, my weekend, and my comfort. That's when I heard the unmistakable clicking of heels approaching. On the sidewalk, sharp, authoritative, and all too familiar. Karen. Everyone in the neighborhood knew her as the self-appointed enforcer of the HOA, even though she technically wasn't on the board anymore. She'd been voted out months ago after she tried to find a single dad for letting his kids draw with chalk on the driveway. But that didn't stop her from patrolling the streets every morning, clipboard in hand and phone ready to record any violations. "Excuse me," she barked, stepping right up to the edge of my lawn. "Do you really think that's an appropriate outfit for being out in public?" I blinked, halfway through a sip of my coffee. "It's 86 degrees, Karen. I don't care if it's 106, she shot back. "This is a family neighborhood. Children play here. You should have some decency." I stared at her for a second, then laughed, which was probably the wrong move. Her face tightened like she'd just tasted vinegar. "Karen," I said calmly, "I'm on my own property. You have no say in what I wear here." But she stepped closer, onto the edge of my grass, pointing that ridiculous clipboard at me like it was a weapon. "Actually, the HOA bylaws say that visible attire outside your home must be appropriate for community standards." "Karen," I interrupted, "you're trespassing." That stopped her for half a second. But then she pulled out her phone and started recording, muttering something about evidence for the HOA. At that point, I'd had enough. I took out my own phone, calmly dialed the non-emergency police number, and told them there was a woman refusing to leave my property. When the officer arrived 10 minutes later, Karen was still ranting about tank tops and community pride. The officer listened, nodded once, and then turned to her. "Ma'am, he's asked you to leave. You're on private property. That's trespassing." Her jaw dropped. "You can't be serious." But the officer was, and what happened next made the entire street come out to watch. The warning ignored. Karen stood frozen on my lawn, her mouth opening and closing like she couldn't believe the officer was talking to her. "I'm the one enforcing the rules," she snapped, jabbing a finger toward me. "He's the one violating community standards." The officer sighed. "Ma'am, those standards don't give you the right to enter private property without permission." "But, ma'am," he interrupted, voice firm now, "you've been asked to leave. You need to step off the lawn right now." Karen's face turned bright red, her lips trembling with fury. You could practically hear the gears in her head grinding as she calculated whether to back down or double down. Of course, being Karen, she chose the latter. "This is ridiculous," she shouted. "You people are letting this neighborhood fall apart. Next thing you know, people will be walking around half naked." I cut her off. "Karen, seriously, just go home. Nobody cares about my tank top except you." Her eyes narrowed. "Oh, you'll regret talking to me like that." Then she did something no one expected. She marched right past the officer and deeper onto my property, pointing at my garden bed. "And those garden lights are in violation of HOA Code Section 7B. "Ma'am," the officer barked. "Step back now." But she didn't. She spun around, phone still recording, shouting about how she was being harassed and that she had every right to ensure compliance. The officer moved closer, placing a calm but commanding hand near his holster. "Karen," he said, "this is your last warning. You are trespassing. If you don't leave immediately, you'll be detained." The street had grown quiet. Neighbors peeked out from behind curtains and fences. I could see my next-door neighbor, Mike, pretending to water his plants just to get a better view. Karen, of course, didn't take the hint. She crossed her arms defiantly and said, "Fine. Arrest me then. Let's see how the HOA feels about this injustice." The officer nodded once. "All right." The next sound was the unmistakable click of handcuffs. Karen gasped, twisting around. "Wait, what are you doing? You can't arrest me. I'm a homeowner." "You're also trespassing," the officer said calmly. "You were warned multiple times." As he led her toward the patrol car, Karen continued ranting about lawsuits and conspiracies, her voice echoing down the street. And me? I just stood there in my tank top, sipping the last of my coffee. wondering how a simple morning turned into a neighborhood spectacle. But I knew this wasn't over. Karen wasn't the type to let something like this go quietly. The fallout. By the time the patrol car pulled away, half the neighborhood was outside pretending to walk their dogs or check the mail. Let's be honest. They were all there to watch Karen get hauled off in handcuffs. As soon as she was gone, people started murmuring, laughing, whispering. I caught snippets. Did you see her face? Finally, someone stood up to her. About time. I just shook my head. I wasn't proud or smug. Okay, maybe a little, but mostly I was exhausted. I had no idea what kind of chaos would come next. The next morning, there was already a post on the neighborhood Facebook group titled An Unfortunate Incident on Willow Lane. It was, of course, written by none other than Karen herself. She had been released a few hours after her arrest and wasted no time spinning her version of the story. According to her post, she had been wrongfully detained for upholding community decency and protecting neighborhood values. She even uploaded a heavily edited video from her phone that conveniently cut out the part where the officer warned her multiple times to leave. The clip showed me standing in my yard while she dramatically claimed I was creating a hostile environment. Within minutes, the comments exploded. Half the neighborhood defended her, mostly the older residents who still believed in her HOA crusades. The other half sided with me, calling her out for harassment and suggesting she finally take a break from policing everyone else's lives. Then, out of nowhere, the actual HOA board president, a calm and reasonable guy named Dan, commented, "For the record, Ms. Karen is no longer affiliated with the HOA and has no authority to enforce any policies. Please respect each other's privacy and property boundaries." That comment shut down the argument, at least for a while. Later that day, as I was cleaning up some tools in my garage, a few neighbors stopped by. Mike brought me a six-pack of beer as a thank you for the entertainment. Mrs. Gomez, from across the street, told me she'd been dealing with Karen's rule patrols for years and was secretly relieved someone had finally taken action. I smiled, but deep down, I knew Karen wasn't done. She was too proud, too stubborn, and too obsessed with being right to just let this fade. And sure enough, 2 days later, I saw her car parked down the street, just idling, watching, waiting. Something told me this story was far from over. The final confrontation. For the next few days, I tried to ignore her. Every time I stepped outside, I could feel Karen's eyes on me from somewhere down the street. Sometimes in her car, sometimes behind her curtains. It was unsettling, but I refused to let her think she'd gotten to me. Then, one afternoon, as I was trimming the hedge near my mailbox, I heard that familiar voice again. "You think you've won, don't you?" I turned slowly, and there she was, standing at the edge of my property, arms crossed. Her expression a mix of bitterness and determination. "Karen," I sighed. "You really don't learn, do you?" She stepped forward, but this time she stopped at the sidewalk. "I just came to tell you," she said, voice trembling with anger, "that I've spoken to my lawyer. I'm filing a complaint against you and that police officer. You both humiliated me in front of everyone." I put down my trimmers. "Karen, you humiliated yourself. All you had to do was walk away." Her jaw tightened. "You think this is funny? I've given this neighborhood 10 years of service. I've maintained standards, organized meetings, enforced rules. Bullied people," I interrupted. "You've bullied people, Karen. That's all you've done." She blinked, stunned that I'd said it so directly. For a second, I almost felt bad, until she pulled out her phone again and started recording. "That's it," I muttered, pulling my phone out too. "We're not doing this again." Just then, a familiar police cruiser rolled down the street. Officer Miller, the same guy from before, stepped out, clearly recognizing the situation. "Afternoon, folks," he said, walking up with a calm but firm tone. "Karen, I thought we talked about this." "I'm not trespassing," she snapped. "I'm on public property." "You are," the officer agreed. "And as long as you stay there, that's fine. But if you continue to harass your neighbor, that's another matter." Karen opened her mouth to argue, but Miller held up a hand. "This is your official warning. Any more incidents, and we'll consider it harassment. Do you understand?" She glared at me, then at him, then finally turned around and stomped back toward her car. As she drove off, the officer looked at me and chuckled. "Some people just can't let it go." "Yeah," I said, exhaling. "But maybe this time, She finally will. A week later, the HOA sent a formal letter to all residents, officially banning Karen from acting in any representative capacity for the association. It was the end of her reign of regulation. And me? I went back to enjoying my weekends, tank top, lawn chair, and all, knowing peace had finally returned to Willow Lane.